The game you're about to see is like a dream come true. I played the strongest female chess player of all time, Grandmaster Judith Polgar. But I wasn't alone. To play with me, there were Winner Grandmaster Jennifer Shadi, many girls, mostly part of the group, of the chess group that Jennifer is leading. And then, of course, my Twitch chat that was always there the whole time, helping, watching, and also trying to suggest moves through the whole game. But let's not waste any time. Let's get started. So let's go. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, bishop B5, A6. We're in the Spanish main line. Bishop A4. Everything went on, just developing the pieces. Now we castled, so we kept the possibility to play the Marshall Gambit after C3, D4. This would lead to a Marshall Gambit, very sharp opening that Judith tried to avoid because here she played the main anti-Marshall H3. Bishop B7, knight C3, D6, A4. This is all theory. Now black needs to attack this strong bishop with knight A5. The bishop needs to be preserved. Bishop A2, B4 attacking the knight. Knight moves to the most powerful square on D5, and now lots of pieces get traded. Bing, boom, bang, boom. And we get to this position. Black has a problem, the knight on A5. And if not, the position is pretty fine. We have nearly all the pieces developed. This bishop is slightly bad, but black has a very strong pawn on E5, and this pawn is a bit of a weakness. What did we do? We played the move F5. The reason is that we want to avoid the move D4, because here, if D4 happens, we can replay with the move E4, because F5 is protecting the pawn. Like this, white needs to be a bit more shy with the move D3. And now we felt like we had a good position, so we wanted to reactivate this knight, and we played the move C6. D takes C6, knight takes C6, Judith played the move C3. And we felt like, okay, no problem, we should have at least an equal position. We just protected the pawn on B4 one more time, and we missed a very powerful idea. Bishop D2, attacking the pawn on B4 one more time. We protected naturally the pawn with rook B8. Queen B3 check, the king has to move, and then queen to D5. And this queen, oh my god, that's such a nice outpost that we just completely underestimated. Now the queen is attacking this knight, and if the knight moves, this pawn is also under attack. So we really need to be careful. We played the move queen B6 to keep everything protected, the knight, the pawn, everything under control. And now the strong move bishop G5. The idea is pretty powerful after bishop take, knight take. Well, we are nearly getting a small formate, which would be pretty bad. Let's say around the moves, here you see this move formate into action, double check the knight and the queen, and then queen G8, rook takes, and boom! Even if it's a beautiful mate, we didn't want to get it. And so here we didn't capture the bishop, but we went with the move rook B8, which is actually a blunder, because we are losing control over the B5 square. This sounds like a very deep idea. Why? Okay. But here there is a very strong move for white. Bishop take E7, and after knight takes E7, queen to B5. Now there are problems, because this pawn could be soon hanging. If queen takes, pawn take, this pawn is under attack, and now white has a serious hedge on the queen side. So this was a big shot for Judith, but she played another move, rook C1, which is also very challenging, but less accurate than bishop take E7. We played the move H6 to kick this bishop away, and after bishop E3, queen to A6. It's very important to bring the queen to A6, because after queen C7, well, we are in the same line of the rook, and we don't want to be there. And same things after queen B7, we auto-pin the knight. So this is also very dangerous. So queen A6, very important move. Also, in a way, we are looking at this pawn on D3. And Judith played the move queen B5. Now, we don't want to exchange the queen, if not... we have problem of the queen side, and we play the move queen A8, D4, trying to undermine our center. Now, every move like E4, F4 was not working, so we had to find an alternative. Rook B8 attacking the queen. Queen has to go somewhere. Judith went to C4, and now we want to keep the pressure on the center. No pushing the pawn, but go with bishop F6. A very smart move. Now we are threatening E4. B4 was not possible to play E4, because after D5, intermezzo, we cannot bring our knight here, because after change there is the strong move queen f7 attacking the bishop and the pawn, and this pass pawn becomes super powerful. This would have been super dangerous. So we played bishop f6, and now if white is just passing, we can now push, and after d5, we can go with the knight here, and after knight takes, we take with the bishop, and now we have an amazing position. So of course Judith didn't allow this and took the pawn on d5. Now we made another mistake. We had to take with the pawn, keeping this knight here, but we did a human mistake. We felt like, oh, we had to protect this knight so many times, this was a problem, and so we took here with the knight. I will show you the difference. After knight take, pawn take, bishop c5 has been played, attacking the rook. We pinned the bishop with rook f c8, and now we felt like we have a good position, but Judith surprised us one more time. Pawn take b4, rook take b4, and queen e6, attacking the weak pawn on f5, the only weak pawn, and she got it. We played rook e8, attacking the queen, queen take f5, and rook take b2. But what was the difference? Why did we have to keep the knight? Let's go shortly back. And here, if we take with the pawn, the same idea is not working, because after bishop b5, we can play rook half c8, c take b4, and now e4, attacking the knight. So it's good to keep that knight on board because we have this move, intermezzo. And after knight moves to d2, we take with the knight, the bishop cannot take, and now we use the powerful square on d3. So as you can see, the fact that this knight is on the board makes us win a tempo, and now the knight can go on d3. Very powerful. Sadly, this didn't go this way. We took, as we see, and we got to this position. Now we have a very hard endgame. It would have been very difficult after the move bishop e3, with the idea to take here, because this bishop is hanging. We have to protect the bishop with the rook f8, but here the situation is still very hard after rook c8. Judith didn't play this, but played the move rook ed1. Now we had the chance to activate this bishop and prevent bishop e3. Bishop g5, attacking the rook. Rook to c4. The rook is maybe trying to go to g4, sacrificing an exchange and trying to give us mate. That looks very scary. And now we played a very good move, queen a6, attacking the rook with the idea to bring our queen to e6, exchanging the queen. We want to exchange as many pieces as possible. Queen f7, we thought this move was a blunder, because now after queen e6, we have to change the queen. The queen is attacking at the same time the queen, and the rook on c4. So basically you have to exchange. And after queen take, rook take, we thought like, okay, this endgame should be a draw. Not that easy. h4, attacking the bishop, bishop e7, we said, okay, we exchange even the bishop. That's definitely a draw. Rook d7, rook take, and now we actually have lots of problems. This rook is attacking this pawn, and we also have problem with the king, with the 7th rank, with the 8th rank, with lots of problems. h5 could also be an idea. We went for the active counterattack, rook f6. We don't protect the pawn, but we counterattack. This is very important, attacking the pawn on f2 and threatening to take on g6. Here we nearly got an heart attack after seeing the move h5. This move is so powerful because basically white is threatening to give mate. Check with the rook, bring the other rook on the 8th rank and mate on h8. And this looks very scary, and if we attack the pawn here with the idea of taking, well, there is no way, because g4 is happening, and after rook g5 we are really getting mated. Check, king here, rook d8, and now even if we take, the king is running out of checks, and then the mate on h8 will be inevitable. Likely here we found a defense. Instead of rook f5 immediately, we play check first, king h2, and then rook to f4, attacking the pawn. If g4 now, we can take here with check, the king has to move, and then we will bring the rook back to f8 to defend. And if white doesn't play g4, well, we will just take this with check, and that's an important difference. So here, no problem. And actually, Judith didn't play h5, but played the move rook c8 check, king h7, and now she went with double rook on the 7th rank, attacking g6. Here we felt like we don't want to lose that pawn, so we didn't take on f2, but we went to protect the pawn. Rook a7, attacking the pawn on a5, and now we have to counterattack in a way. And here we were again very scared, we are losing 2 pawns, so no, we will lose this endgame. But no, we found a defense, rook b1 check, king h2, and rook b4. And now we are threatening to take here with check, which is super good. The game went on with rook take f5, rook take h4 check, king back, and e4. We need to push this pawn in order to protect it. Rook e7, rook behind the pawn. Now there could be idea like rook e5 taking this pawn. Again, we have to find an active way to attack Judith. And we went with rook h, g4, g3, and rook f6. Our idea is now to go behind this pawn in order to play the move e3 and change the last pawns. King g2 has been played, rook f3, rook e8, and finally we reached a3. And now we got another heart attack. king to h3. It felt like we are losing the pawn on e4 because the rook has to be moved. But finally we found the move rook f4. Likely the rook can go there because this pawn is pinned thanks to the rook. And we're also attacking the pawn on f2. So after king g2, rook g4, king h3, rook f4, we thought like we were making a draw. But not too easy. Rook a7 played by Judith, attacking the pawn on g7 that now cannot be protected. So we have to take on f2, and after rook e7, we have to give up the pawn. We were scared to be mated, but we didn't have an alternative. After rook half f3, we are counterattacking g3, and our hope is to use the pawn on the e file to deviate the rook, and so that we can finally take the pawn on g3. After rook takes g7, the king moves to h8, and now a move like rook e7 is not good, because even if you're threatening mate, we can just take here with check and then the rook is protecting. So Judith played a very strong move, rook g4, attacking the pawn, forcing us to push. Now the two rooks are not attacking together the pawn on g3, and rook on e4, threatening mate. Again, another hard attack for us. King g8, protecting the mate. If check, of course, we can use our rook to defend. And now again, king g4. We were scared. The king is planning to go on h5, g6, and eventually really giving us mate with the coordination of two rooks and the king. But also here, no panic, we found a defense. Rook f7, trying to exchange the rook. Judith doesn't want. Rook on a6, attacking the pawn. And now check on g7. Important check. The king cannot go on h5 because this pawn would be lost. And so king h4. Rook a1, and we were so excited because we are threatening mate to the strongest female of all time. But of course, she played king h3 defending. And after rook a3, going back to protect the pawn, she played the move g4. Now we started to see the light under the tunnel because we see a way to give up this pawn in order to capture the pawn on g4. After e2 check, the king has to move, and now we're threatening to promote the pawn and also to give a check, and capture the pawn on g4. Judith had to take the pawn on e2, and after check, he moved, check, rook defense, exchange of the rooks. We take the pawn on g4, and now there were just two pawns on the board. The king has to move. Rook b4, we just want to go behind the pawn with rook b3, rook a3. And now finally Judith took the pawn on h6, and we took the final pawn, just rooks on the board, and the game ended in a draw. Yay! Oh my god,
Yay!
That's officially a draw.
Amazing.
And this was our live reaction. If you like the game, remember to subscribe and like the video, and let me know in the comments if in the highlights of my career on Wikipedia there is already this game or not yet. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.